Is this on? Yes. Good morning. Welcome to the Litchfield Women's Club's annual Meet the Candidates event. This is a service initiative we've offered for more than 20 years in our town. Thank you to each of the candidates. Glad you can make it today. And a special thanks to our moderator, Phil Reed, and the Litchfield Cable Committee as well, who are filming this today. We hope you'll enjoy refreshments in the lobby and pick up some cookies on the way out from Girl Scout Troop 12345, which is the easiest troop number I've ever heard. The Litchfield Women's Club is a community service organization. It's open to women of all ages and interests in our town. Info on the club and its activities can be found in the lobby. We hope you'll mark your calendars for Saturday, April 12th, and plan to attend our annual Easter Bunny Breakfast at the Litchfield Middle School. It benefits our scholarship fund, and to date we've distributed over $25,000. And I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, Phil Reed.
There we go. Good morning. I'm out of practice. I haven't been up here doing this for a while, but John called me to fill in. John's family has been, as many of you know, their son Daniel recently had surgery down at Children's Hospital to help do some work on his spine, and he's coming along fine. He's home, and John and Tricia are ready to take you all on next Tuesday at Election Day, because they'll be there to show up to do his job. I'd like to welcome you to the Meet the Candidates affair and thank the Litchfield women for sponsoring this again. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Excuse me. A couple of comments I'd like to make, and first and foremost, I think we owe a round of thanks and applause to each and every one of these people up here and those who could not attend, who has stepped forward to commit their time and their efforts to do the work that needs to be done in our community. But whether or not we agree with them in whole or in part or not at all, I think we should give them a big round of applause and thanks for their coming forward. You know, up until yesterday, I was afraid one of the candidates that we normally see signs for this time of year wasn't going to show up this year. But yesterday, I had occasion to have to go from my home in the north end down to Hudson, and by golly, his signs were up. Problem is, I see his signs up in every town, and I never know what office he's running for. And that's our old friend Frost Heaves. Okay, we'll start with this. I will ask each candidate to come up and say hello and to note for which office they are running. Candidates are welcome to provide a brief personal background, the reason for seeking public office, and what they hope to accomplish if elected to office. Candidates will have 5 minutes each to complete their introductions. After introductions, we'll break for approximately 10 minutes to prepare audience questions. Now we have paper and pencils down here in a basket if you want to write out questions for them, and the candidates are limited to submit questions that they would like asked of themselves or of other candidates. Residents are welcome to either come to the microphone to ask a question, or they can submit the questions in writing. Cards and pencils are up here. Please try to keep questions focused on current issues. No personal gripes or attacks will be allowed. Questions may be addressed to a specific person or to a group of candidates. The candidate who is asked a question will have 5 minutes to respond. All other candidates running for the same office will be allowed approximately 3 minutes to respond. I will do my best to randomly select the order of speakers when questions aren't targeted to a single candidate. Any questions about how we're going to proceed? Good. Okay, give each of the candidates an opportunity to come up and introduce themselves. And why don't we start from here, Brent, and go right across the line.
Always have to do this. Good morning. My name is Brent Lemire, and I'm one of your incumbent selectmen hoping to retain my seat so that I can continue to serve you, as I have done in various capacities since I moved to town in 1977. My first bite at the public service apple was the fire department, which I joined in February of 1977. I was promoted to captain and was elected fire chief in 1985, serving in that capacity until my retirement in 2001. I also served on the Litchfield Budget Committee from 1978 to 1985, serving as chair from 1981 to 1985. In 2001, I was elected again to the Budget Committee and served until 2010, and as chair from 2004 to 2010. In 2011, I was elected to the Board of Selectmen. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Social Sciences from Central Connecticut State University and a Master of Public Administration degree from the University of New Hampshire that I was lucky enough to receive in 2004. I'm a certified secondary education teacher and currently serve as the town administrator for Northwood, New Hampshire. I'm also an adjunct faculty member at the University of New Hampshire at Manchester, where I developed a curriculum for the first-year experience program focusing on public service and government. I believe in good governance and respectful discourse, conducting the prudential affairs of the town in a manner that utilizes the limited resources we have to provide the best services possible to our residents. I ask for your vote on Tuesday and pledge to continue to move Litchfield forward as we keep an eye on the bottom line. Thank you.
I'm George Lambert. I've previously been a selectman in Litchfield. It was my first public office. Presently represent the town of Litchfield in the State House as a member of the state legislature, and have spent a long time trying to understand the issues around government and around New Hampshire and around finding the balance of governance. Now, there are different opinions on government, and mine has been fairly consistent since I started. The government that tells you more and more of what to do isn't the government I want, and I've demonstrated 6 years as a selectman of being that guy and 3 years in the House. We, as a community, need to select people who are going to sit on the board and make some decisions, because Litchfield is an evolving community. The question of whether or not we should delegate every decision to the voters is a question that started when Litchfield was formed. We had town meetings, and now we delegate much of that responsibility to the Board of Selectmen in helping to set policy for the town, directing our town administrator, and actually giving our voters decisions to make on the budgets and at deliberative session. The other choice in government is to actually go out and say, let's micromanage it all. We talk about that. Having people on the board who will engage in conversation and say, what are we doing and is it the right thing, and who are engaged, I think is a powerful voice. And I'm that voice. I would like to continue being that person. Unlike many people who run for public office, I have one guiding principle, that is, I'll listen to anyone, and if you can convince me to change my mind because you have the right and better argument, I'll consider it. But I'll always go with the general principle that says, Is government representing the people it's supposed to? And in fulfilling that role, can I actually benefit the people of the town of Litchfield? Thank you for the opportunity to previously serve. And if you appreciate my voice, I would appreciate your vote on Tuesday. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Moderator. And I'd like to thank the Litchfield Women's Club for the opportunity to engage the people of Litchfield. Every one of us, for the most part, has served the community over the past 30 years in one fashion or another, and we are truly honored to be amongst a group of people in our community that actually wants to get up and do something. Very rare is this across the state, across the country. I won't get into a bunch of personal histories and personal achievements. I've been here almost 30 years. I've served the community in various seats and fashions over the past 20 years, up to and including selectmen. I will tell you I have no aspirations of managing other towns or becoming state representatives or any additional political ambitions other than to serve the immediate people which my children and my wife and I enjoy working and living with. Everyone has touched on fiscal responsibilities and how important it is to manage the resources. None of us are enjoying, to my knowledge, 15 and 20% annual raises anymore, and yet we continue to see our local government, our federal and state governments continuing to increase the burdens on all of us. My main aspiration, if elected for the one-year term here, is to basically provide stability for the interim term and allow a fully elected new board to continue the work that the previous board and the rest of us have engaged in one shape or another. It takes all of us through election process, attending meetings and voicing our opinions. I hope to serve you again over the next year. I appreciate your vote. Thank you very much and have a pleasant morning.
And when you follow Brent, this is what you have to do. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Perry, and I'm running for the one-year seat on the Board of Selectmen. I have lived in this town for about 14 years now, and it's the place where I've chosen to raise my family. I've seen this town go through some great changes. I originally started my town service when I decided to join the planning board, and I did that for about 7 years. I was chairman of that board for at least 3, to my knowledge, and then I decided to move on to go to a selectman role. My first attempt failed, but the second attempt I was elected, and I served 3 years for you. And with the constraints of my family and my kids, I decided to take a step back for a little while, and this one-year seat opened up with Mrs. Jewett stepping down, and I wanted to make sure it was filled by somebody that could really bring some experience back so that the board didn't take a step back and that the town wouldn't have to suffer. I'm very pleased that I actually have Mr. Garrett and Mr. Raccio running against me, because it's nice to see the interest in the seat. And it's also nice for you, the citizens, to have a choice. As a selectman, I went from a regular member my first year to actually chairing the board at the end. I too wish to seek stability, and I would like to see the board stay as a cohesive group. So for that, I can say any questions, I will welcome them later on, and thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank the Ladies Club for putting this on it again this year. I think this is a very valuable event where you get a chance to vet your candidates, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I've been in town about 25 years, and over the time I've been in town, I've served various capacities on the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board. I've served on the Budget Committee now, one term as a TAP to fill out somebody's term, and 2 terms as elected. I served 2 terms as an elected selectman. I also served on the Merrimack Valley Water District, which I'm continuing representing Litchfield on today, as well as on the executive committee at NRPC. I'm running for the budget committee yet one more time, and I think it's a very important place for people that have town history to be, because it gives them the ability to look backwards into some of the earlier events that caused some of the later events that have happened, and to put a little bit different spin. I'm fiscally conservative, and my goal is to deliver a budget that the folks that live in Litchfield, all the folks that live in Litchfield, can afford. So I appreciate this opportunity to serve you yet one more time, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
I'm going to give Mr. Gourette just a hair more time, seeing as he's running for 2 offices.
If you want, Phil, I can just do the one and then come back at the end and do the other. I think I'd prefer to do it that way. My name's Jason Gourette, and I've been in town here for 9 years. I have a wife, 2 children still in our schools. I've been active in the community ever since. I'm a fiscal conservative and a Republican, a proud one. I retired from the Navy after 23 years of service, worked on multiple aircraft platforms. Since leaving active duty, I've been a facilities management professional. I've worked in manufacturing, healthcare, residential and commercial property, and have a very diverse breadth of experience in drawing that to make decisions. I'm an involved member of quite a number of groups locally here at the state level or at the local level and county level. I'm on the Hillsborough County Republican Executive Committee. I'm the Area F, which is Hudson, Litchfield, and Pelham. I'm the chair of that Republican committee. I'm on the Litchfield Town Republican Committee. I also sit as an alternate on the Litchfield Planning Board. I sit on the School District Facilities and Planning Committee, and I also sit on the District PERC Committee, which is the Curriculum Review Committee. And I have a lot of fun actually recording these meetings when I get a chance. I'm very pro small town Litchfield. My preference is not to make it easy for developers to come in here and change who we are. You'll actually see warrants on the ballot this Tuesday that begin that change. Over the last several years, there's been an attempt to allow things to go on that will make it easier for others to come in here and change who we are. Being a fiscal conservative, at every opportunity that I've been presented, it seems as we go forward in life, it's do more with less, except when it comes to government. The choice is always make it least painful for the taxpayer to recognize that we're taking more of their livelihood. And so there's ways of creating this shell game that moves things from one place to another and makes it appear as though we're not spending more money, but we do. And you see that every December or twice a year when you get your tax bill, right? So my job as a selectman would be to ferret out the reasons why and create an open dialogue with folks in town and let them know why, not hide behind the fact that I'm on the board and I can't discuss it. So I ask you to vote for me on March 11th. I'll be around back for my school board whenever.
My name is Carrie Douglas, and I'm also running for one of the budget committee seats. My husband and I have lived in Litchfield now for 5.5 years. We have 2 small boys who are not yet in the school system, but still want to make sure that that school is strong. Before staying home with my boys, I was a project manager for a construction management firm that operated in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We worked for biotech and educational clients, doing a wide range of projects. I managed projects myself that ranged from about $5 million to up to $60 million. As a project manager, one of the responsibilities was to create budgets, to explain them to the clients, to manage them, to make sure that the project was completed within the expected schedule and budget. I also helped to review other budgets as part of a third-party review, which is very similar to how the budget committee operates. They take the budgets created by the school board or by the board of selectmen, they review them, ask questions, and then figure out what would be the best that they feel that the voters can afford. So that process is very similar to the process that I have worked in professionally. So I'm very comfortable with that and can ask the tough questions, make tough decisions, advocate for the taxpayer. And so unfortunately, I do not have the experience yet that a lot of these people up here have, and I do appreciate all of the volunteer time that these guys have put in. Sitting through those budget committee meetings, I can tell how much time and effort and passion people up here put into it, and I do appreciate that. This would be my first elected position in the town of Litchfield. Hopefully not my last, since I love this town and want to stay involved. And I want to make it sure that it stays affordable so that other people, young families like mine, can afford to move here. And that those who do live here can continue to afford to do so. So I look forward to your support on Tuesday. And thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Janine Lepore, and I am running for a seat on the school board. My husband and I have lived in Litchfield for over 23 years, and we raised our children here. And they went through the Litchfield public school system. My daughter graduated from Campbell High School last spring, and I have a son who is a junior right now at Campbell High School. As a parent of children who've gone through the Litchfield school system, I've had the opportunity to work with the teachers, administration, and coaches over the past 12 or so years. I know what works well, and I know what changes I'd like to see in order to improve education in Litchfield. Because I believe education is the fundamental building block upon which a free society is built. It is the best insurance against poverty, ignorance, and tyranny. It is not just a good idea to educate our children well, it is our duty. It's our duty to give our children the best education we possibly can. And when I say our children, I'm not just talking about mine. I'm talking about your children, and I'm talking about whether or not you have children at all in the Litchfield school system. Not educating our children well is a mistake, because one day we will pass the responsibility of our self-governance, our freedom, and our very lives to the children that we are educating today. I put myself through college at UNH Manchester and then later on law school at Massachusetts School of Law while my children were young. I worked as a trial attorney on my own for a period of time, and now I'm working as a trial attorney with the Committee for Public Counsel Services in Massachusetts. Through my work, I have seen firsthand the costs to a community that the lack of education can cause. Anything from crime to drug abuse, unemployment, increased recidivism. Through my legal training and experience, I take a number of skills to the table as a school board member. I will think independently, and I will consider all sides of an issue and reach conclusions based on careful review of all the facts and information presented to me. I have the ability to read and interpret statutory language. I've been trained to be an effective negotiator. I can work collaboratively with people, and I will not be influenced by political ideology, and I don't have a private agenda. I strongly advocate for what I believe in. I understand we have a limited budget, and just throwing money at the schools alone is no solution. We need to make sure that we're getting the very best value for the tax dollars that we do spend. If elected to the school board, I will be a zealous advocate for the community and especially for the children in Litchfield. I would love to have the opportunity to work for you and with you to improve our schools. If you select me to be a member of the school board, I will honor the trust you place in me by working tirelessly to provide the best education possible for the children of Litchfield. I believe that working together, we can make Litchfield schools the best in the state. Please vote for me on March 11th. Thank you.
morning. My name is Chris Pascucci. I'm running for my second term for the Budget Committee. Anyone in this room knows my politics. I'm fiscal conservative. I'm not an expert. I'm not a career. Don't plan on making this a career. I think I contributed the past 3 years to the budget, but to understand what kind of job I've done over the past 3 years, which is what you are grading me on, you have to understand the role of the Budget Committee. And I'm reading from a quote from the Local Government Center Handbook, which according to RSA 32, the purpose of the Budget Committee is to assist voters in the prudent appropriation of public funds. That's simply what it is. Budget Committee becomes an arbiter, given power by the legislature to reconcile the appropriation requests to maintain tax load within manageable proportions. We need to take and look at everything that comes in from the school and the town and look out for everybody. Parents, students, teachers, taxpayers, elderly, young, the entire tax paying base here. The purpose of the Budget Committee is second set of eyes, actually even to second guess what is put in front of the committee during the budget process, and I believe I have done that. The purpose is to ask questions. Sometimes the debates can become a little heated. Sometimes there could be some serious debates. I believe that is good. It's good to ask questions. It's good to take the opposite side. It's good to second guess. It's good to play devil's advocate. That is the purpose. When you do that, instead of everybody just rubber stamping or agreeing or nodding your head yes, you get better results. Better for the children, better for the adults, better for everybody. I believe I've done that over the past 3 years, and if I'm elected again, I will continue to do that next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I thought I'd just go over the Litchfield Education Association sent out a questionnaire to the prospective candidates for school board, and I thought I'd share with you what the questions were and how I answered them. They asked what my top 3 goals were. Number 1, be better than average. I'm disappointed every time I hear the administration say we're performing at state average. With the implementation of Common Core and the Smarter Balance Assessment, which is the standardized testing for it, it's imperative that we bridge the gap between the Common Core, the identified weaknesses, and world-class standards, such as what Massachusetts had been able to do before they adopted Common Core. Since then, they've paused implementation for 2 years to study it further, as they've recognized the concerns. Common Core standards should be the floor, not the ceiling of what we expect for our children in this district. Unfortunately, the high-stakes testings that go with accepting Common Core will negatively impact teachers when full implementation also includes unfair teacher evaluations based on those standardized test scores. In my opinion, this leads to the inevitable teaching to the test, as good teachers will be forced to spend quality time ensuring certain materials are covered so that students will score appropriately and not negatively impact a teacher's livelihood. Secondly, we need to secure a teacher's contract. Hopefully the citizens of this town can at some point be presented with an option that they can support. The town is just about equally divided on whether or not agreement is justified. As last March's vote showed, we were evenly split, I believe 45 votes apart, and the agreement was not passed by just those few dozen votes. I believe that even if a contract were to pass this year, it would be by the same small margin that it lost last year, and that's hardly a mandate. My proposal would be to create a new subcommittee derived from a diverse population of Litchfield citizens to develop an ongoing survey of registered voters to better understand what the concerns are of those voters who vote no. And at that point, you can start to address what their concerns are and have a mandate on a teacher's contract, and not a bunch of half the population still disgruntled. Thirdly, I'd like an honors diploma. Options should exist for our top performers. I'd like to see available in our district a track for those who wish to go above and beyond the basic high school diploma. Those students would be able to challenge themselves by studying the most challenging courses, be they honors, AP, or extended learning opportunities, and they should be rewarded by awarding them a new, more prestigious diploma. They also asked components of successful district and how to measure it. Feedback from recently graduated students after 1, 5, and 10 years is needed to best understand how students felt about the education they received and how it met their needs. Success is a very subjective measure. Without hard data from past students, we cannot make any suppositions or conclude any measurable success. A successful school district is not like any other venture. Customer satisfaction, be it the student, the parent, or community member that has no ties to anyone in school, is relative to that person's particular need. We need full community engagement, otherwise much is left on the table. If we truly want to measure the results of our investment, we must understand and survey those to understand over the long term. What is the school board's role in decision making? The student and the schools belong to the citizens of this district. All decision making should rest with the owners of the district, and it is their investment of their children. With that said, the day-to-day decision making has to happen with the professionals hired to carry out those high-level directional decisions. The board has a duty to oversee, through delegation, the educational processes throughout the district and set the expectations. Like a board of directors in a company, vision and direction is set for the officers of the company to implement. How do we recruit highly retained teachers? The question is based entirely on the perception of the individual. 500 professionals surveyed by Mastery Works of Annandale, Virginia, almost universally said that pay and benefits were not the main motivators in the decision to stay with a job or leave it. 95% said this: the key issue was the ability to develop trusting relationships with upper management. I believe if we better balance the current compensation packages that teachers have with a rank and file citizen, we would see a large increase in support for increased pay scales. Couple that with the soft benefits of teaching in a small district like Litchfield, where an individual's voice is determined in determining how the classroom is managed, adds much benefit. And what does the district do well? The district does very well in providing an atmosphere of inclusion for our children. I believe the staff does a very good job in making our kids feel they can succeed in anything they do. They also do a great job with the resources provided. The people in our district care about our children. I believe the district can improve on its listening skills. Not all viewpoints are readily accepted, nor are dissenting opinions. If we were all pulling the cart, this district would have much less division and more synergy. The only way to understand how to ensure all voices are heard is to have all points of view participate in the discussion officially, at the table. I believe one only gets better when challenged to do so. If no one in the group is ever challenged, then little changes, and bridging ideologies cannot happen. Our district needs to have diversity on its board. I bring a viewpoint that is expressed by at least half of this community. I would like to be the bridge that brings this district together. Thank you.
Excuse me. Frank Byron could not make it today because of a prior commitment, and he left a written statement which I will read for him now. Please accept my regrets for being unable to present myself today at the Meet the Candidates program. This is the first and only candidates meeting that I've missed. Prior to this program being scheduled, I had committed to a resident that I would attend a conference with them held in Concord as part of my duties as your state representative. I felt that it was important not to go back on my prior commitment. First, a little about myself. I am a New Hampshire native who has lived in Litchfield for 29 years, where my wife Pat and I raised our family of 3 children. With an advanced degree in biological sciences, I spent my career working in the pharmaceutical and biotechnical industries for companies such as DuPont, Millport Corporation, excuse me, and Genzyme Corporation, from which I retired in 2010. During my industrial career, I served in various corporate leadership roles, lastly as Vice President and General Manager, responsible for all operations of a large-scale manufacturing plant producing life-saving drugs valued in the multiple millions of dollars. As part of my work, I was frequently required to travel, working with managing teams in foreign countries such as France, China, England, Ireland, and others. My work required the management of personnel, budgets, and decision-making, all of which are key skills that carry over to the role of a selectman. Since the early 1990s, I've served the town of Litchfield in many volunteer and elected roles, often as chair of committees such as the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, and for 9 years as your selectman. In my role as selectman, I've represented the select board on all of the town's committees and commissions, including the budget committee and various special purpose joint committees. As an elected town official, I was nominated by past Governor John Lynch and appointed by the Executive Council to serve on the New Hampshire Wetlands Council, representing municipal interest in a quasi-judicial role, deciding disputes between property owners and the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services on wetland matters. As your selectman, I have led the board through the difficult times associated with significant lawsuits against the town and the theft of town funds by a past treasurer, which required me to write financial procedures to ensure it does not happen again. I've worked hard to provide constructive feedback during the implementation of town policies and thoroughly analyzed the critical decisions that routinely come before the board. I have regularly presented alternative ideas for consideration during board deliberations, such as multiple proposals to reduce the selectmen's draft budget and push forward a significant cuts for the formation of the default budgets. I've also proposed a warrant article that would implement a tax cap on the town's budget to protect residents from large increases in their taxes, and voted against the selectmen's warrant article to appoint the road agent, all to keep the citizens in control. I have diligently worked to make the town's government more transparent by advocating for the web posting of key documentation, such as public and non-public meeting minutes, as well as policies and other documents of public interest. I have encouraged the expanded broadcasting of committee meetings on the public access channel and put forward last year's warrant article increasing the citizen membership on the town's budget committee. I am asking for your continued support and vote for the 3-year selectman position. If re-elected, I will continue to represent the best interests of the citizens of Litchfield, striving for efficient and transparent government, responsible decision-making, and continued hard work. If people have questions, they can please call me at home at 889-7424. Frank Barron. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now take a break, about 15 minutes, reconvening at 10 o'clock. In the meantime, you can come forward and write questions that you want to present to the candidates. If anybody at this time has a specific question for candidate Brent Lemire, who has to leave because he's got another commitment, please submit it now. Yes, sir. Come on down and
outside of the, well, I don't know if this is outside of the budget, but back in the 80s, the town had a critical need for a fire station. And at that time, there was a proposal for 2 of them, one at each end of the town. Narrowly missed passing. We still do not have a public safety or a fire facility that can accommodate what the town needs. That's the first thing, of course, that comes to mind. Something that we're facing now is and I say it's related to budget, and I'm sorry, but the downshifting of costs from the state and all of the cost increases of managing and running a local government are exacerbated by the state's downshifting of costs to us. I understand that everything goes up, costs in my household go up, and costs in managing a municipality go up also. And so the challenge that we have is to try to do the best that we can and manage within the resources and with the resources that we have, but also have to account for the pressures that we really didn't expect. I hope that.
I'm going to let other candidates for the office respond to that too. Please, go ahead, Alan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. One of the other compelling issues from the 80s was the road maintenance aspects of the town. In the 80s, we had a couple of referendums that proposed actual maintenance programs, which had we implemented would have carried through, and we would have reaped the benefits of today, where we're still seeing increasing challenges to maintain our infrastructures. Like Selectman Lemire pointed out, the fire station, equipment for our municipal services, both police and fire, are absolutely paramount, as well as the road infrastructure, so that the equipment that we buy for these various departments are not continually challenged with significant maintenance issues, costing us yet again and compounding not only the budgets but life safety factors as well. So there are a number of stretch goals that the community is challenged with, and as Selectman Lemire points out, we're also continually challenged significantly with maintaining fiscal responsibility for the community.
Any other selectman candidates want to speak to that?
Litchfield isn't the town I moved into, and probably isn't the town you moved into. It's different. It's grown, the schools are bigger, the population is larger. But in the last 24 months, it has experienced a radical change. And that change is a bridge at the northern portion of our town, which gives us better but different access to roads and to commuting to other places. What that means is in the next couple of years, we're going to experience a potential change in people who might want to build here, in people who might want to move here, and the makeup of this community. We need to pay attention to that. There is a large opportunity for Litchfield to take advantage or not take advantage of the expansion that will happen at the airport with an industrial park. There are changes that are going to actually fundamentally shift our community, and the Board of Selectmen is going to need to pay attention to those and to actually have a vision for not only where Litchfield has been, but where it's actually going to serve your needs and the needs of the other residents of town. We have to be very, very attentive to that. Thank you.
To speak of the past, I'll be honest with you, in the 80s, I was in the single digits for age, so to speak of the present, one of the biggest issues that this town faces is where we have commercial and industrial type lands. In the northern section of town is one of our largest aquifer protection areas, is where that land is located. So for this town to continue to grow, if we choose to do so, we need to face that hurdle. We need to decide one way or the other what is more important. That's probably one of our biggest issues today.
Recently, there was a town meeting, not like as we know it, but the Nashua Regional Planning District with the Planning Board had a meeting where probably 2 to 3 times the number of people that are here or at any other board meeting showed up to discuss about what they wanted our town to look like. And resoundingly, they said, we don't want it to change. We like the way it is. We do not want development. We don't want no changes. We like it the way it is. It was overwhelming. Yet we see there are measures on the ballot to make it easier for development of this commercial properties. Like there's a simple one, right? The corner of 3A and Albuquerque. That's residential now, and there's on the ballot, that's a change it to commercial. The house was leveled. What do you think's going in there if it happens, right? So we're looking at changing things. They don't have to change. We can allow them to, we can allow our community to be exactly what it is. We don't have to agree to do that. Secondly, with downshifting, we are reaping what we have sowed with regard to downshifting. The decisions we make in our town with regard to personnel and how we structure what we do here and relied in the past on the state to pay for them. If we want 100 police officers because we think we can afford them, then all of a sudden the state says we're not touching retirement anymore. Well, we suffer from that. Our policies have a direct impact on what the state will no longer pay because they got no money either. But with retirements, you know, those things that are downshifted back to us, they come from our decisions here in town. So we need leadership to understand the impact that we're having on these downshifting. I'm not going to blame the state for it. They've got no money to pay for it. They're paying for our decisions, and they've chosen not to. So it's our own responsibility. We shouldn't shirk it.
Okay, folks, we'll take our break. Let's move it to 5 after. And any questions, please write them in. Brent, thanks for being here. Wait a minute, we got another guy who wants to duck out with a commitment. Anybody have any specific questions for George? Perfect. Hearing none, thank you, George. Take a break.
Thank you very much.
If we get a break, we'll take a break.
not. I can't imagine her retiring into a shell.
No, neither can I. It was surprising that she retired at all. But my takeaway was she's not.
No, she's not.
Right.
For her to admit,
Right.
or for her physical capabilities to perform is huge, huge.
I didn't see that one coming, I'll be honest with you.
That's one of these people that, I've known her since the meeting on a makeshift recreation committee in Paul Nicholson's house, where she had the original tank of KJ.
Yep. Boy, that threw me for a loop. She said that.
My wife thought that my wife was going to fall out of her.
Oh, God, you can't say that.
She does not live below the political correctness.
No. Yeah, but that's bad. That's bad.
If she's got it on her mind, you're going to know it. You may not always agree with it. Dedication.
There's a few people in town, my county was one, that different from right or wrong. It's about letting down, about
No, I gotta put this, the get out of my face thing is, look. Don't swipe me. I want to, get out of my face. Yes, Lord.
she has done that.
Yes,
Her contributions are measurable.
I did what I wanted.
Roland's contributions.
Remember last year, that's what I got.
out in the Litchfield News yesterday, the Hudson Litchfield News.
Isn't the school on
The
its
school one is in there too.
Yes, sir.
The school was in yellow. The school was yellow.
Oh, no, it's not in the,
It was in mine.
it wasn't in mine.
I got both of them in mine. Yeah. Interesting.
Mine only has the town. Relax, okay.
Essential tremors. Essential tremors.
The guy was looking at you till salivating, going, whew, I got new
Thing is, my neurologist told me the best thing for essential tremors is booze.
He's right. No,
I gave up drinking.
I read that.
I gave up
Well, it
drinking.
doesn't have to be part of the war.
Coffee.
That's okay. So, would you like a microphone then for public input?
Yeah, he just spoke to me about it.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got this one tied up that one, but I'll plug it in over there and just run along. I'm sorry.
Damn it, I hate it when that happens. I don't. Now, I only eat the company by mashed potatoes.
and discussing it. The thing is, I hate nobody. I sent you a long letter one day. Well, we don't have to talk about that. I absolutely feel that if I impacted someone's life that bad, in that way, I feel horrible about it, right? And I reach out to those people individually. But I can't forget. I'm a network. But you know what? If you really pay attention to it, even on the board, right, when you say all the numbers, I can really see that. So Dennis had it right. I routinely say that board meetings. Dennis is right. Because he's right. It has nothing to do with my personality. Now, do I respect that? Not in my lifetime. That has no bearing on politics. Either something right or it isn't, or it isn't. No, I agree with you. You know, we don't agree on a lot, John. I don't dislike you. I know you don't think, you think differently, obviously, but the thing is, I really, well, no reason to. I think this, and I have a very philosophy. But I would also tell you that, when you understand the whole picture, it changes your mind, and I hope it will keep you. Things have changed, things have changed. Things have changed. What does that change? I also think there's certain things that are in the running of the mansion now that are factors that I don't really think they have. I think you'll swing closer than I think. And this is my opinion. I've done a lot of work. More than most people have a job in the late state in 12 years, 15 years. I've moved around. And everybody says, oh, this is the way we do this. This is the way we do this. And quite honestly, that's how we do things. Because everybody's settled into a groove of this is the way we do it here. Here's the color, go out. You get there and you go, well, you roll into this Naval Air Station. Oh, this is how we do it. And you came from another place that did it a different way. Also, you're running into this nebulous thing where you know. So one of two things happen. You push until it moves, or you just absorb into the blob, right? How do things change unless you're willing to?
And I agree. And I think that things have changed in the government side. Right? And you're moving a machine. It's a small machine. It's cumbersome. It gets very tough. Certain things are just time because you got to go through all the suits. That's government. It is designed to go through. But we, Litchfield, I do think we are bringing up at a faster rate. I think we're, a lot of challenges we have with resources and having to stay on the place. You know how you get more? You know how you get more?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
You're against it. You're not commercial. You're against it. The railroad on the show. I know that there's
okay, folks, let's bring it back to order, please. Ladies and gentlemen, while we were in break, I was in a conversation with some of the candidates here, and I was relating from my own background and experience and the philosophy I have coming out, and I think it's analogous to what goes on in the town and the school district. So my background is involvement in human services agencies. And I had the privilege in my background to serve on several human service agency board of directors. And I also had the difficult task 1 year or 2 years of serving on the allocations committee of the Nashua United Way. And I always felt it was the responsibility of those on the human service agencies who were making a plea to the United Way for funding to not go before the agency with the thought, well, what can we get, how much can we get from it? But go with the thought that we need to tell them what we see as the needs in our community, what it needs to be done to do it, and how much it would cost us to do it. And that it's the very difficult job of the United Way allocations folks to look at all these wonderful ideas and decide which ones can we afford and how much can we afford towards them. And frankly, I always felt I'd rather be on the asking side than on the side of making the hard decision. And I think there's an analogy there between the relationship of the school board and the selectmen and the budget committee. That this is philosophically what their functions are. And I was asked by one of the candidates to share this thought with you to help you recognize what's going on. Well, we have some very good questions that have been presented here. And I think one of the first ones I'll bring out is one that's been near and dear to my heart for many years. Years ago, Continental Paving Company offered to build a plant in Litchfield, but the industry was turned down. If this happened today, would you support it? And do you think there is a way to have controlled development? And I'll throw it out to any one of the selectmen candidates to step forward and address that. Go ahead. Anyone?
That is a very intriguing question. I was actually in the community when that was posed to us and voted affirmative. And now after, what, 20 years or so, Phil? Something to that magnitude? When we look at the two facilities Continental Paving currently employs, one by the new golf course, of course, and one off of West Road, it becomes very apparent very quickly how that particular industry and that group of individuals harmonizes with the community. Continental's, I believe it's crushed gravel that comes out of the plant by the Albuquerque intersection there. Yeah. They operate during the season 20 to 24 hours a day. A very good friend of mine lives right behind that plant, literally. As a matter of fact, their properties abut. And I have never once heard him complain about any type of adverse impact of an industry that crushes gravel and digs gravel and processes gravel had on his ability to sleep or his ability for his business to thrive or any adverse. So I do believe there is room for controlled growth, and I believe, like candidate Perry has stated, it is absolutely imperative that we as selectmen, planning board representatives, zoning board representatives, understand and engage those opportunities with that in mind.
See?
So just to be clear, the question was, would I want it?
Well, not necessarily just Continental, but do you think there is a way to have controlled development?
I think the experience I have from working with the planning board was definitely a good stepping stone into coming into the role as a selectman. In a case of controlled development, a lot of times when you get very large projects, such as the size of Continental's plant that they have in Londonderry, a lot of times they come with unique characteristics that basically make it controlled anyway, because they're only going to push as far as they can to work with the town to get what they need, but there's always going to be a return on the investment back to the town. There's always an improvement, whether it's sometimes turning lanes on roads or things like that. Controlled development's actually really easy the bigger the company is. The smaller the company is and the smaller the building there's going to be, there's a lot less leeway.
I believe we have controlled development as it stands. Any company that chooses to develop land in Litchfield, there's a process to do so. And I believe in the natural stops that are already in place. So what happens is now if someone chooses to come to Litchfield to develop land for commercial interest, they would come through the process and they would go step by step, and people would ask questions and either approve or disapprove, or they'd file for a variance. That's controlled growth. So we currently have that in our town. Personally, I don't see, because of the way our infrastructure currently sits and the desires of people that I've talked to, most people don't want this commercial growth in our town. We don't want Hudson, we don't want 28 in Salem, or we don't want South Willow. We don't want this congestion that comes with it. Currently, Continental leaves their plant, goes, the only thing that it touches in Litchfield is that top section of Albuquerque, then goes onto a state road. So there's a very little impact to who we are. If you start deciding to put people up and down 3A close to 102, granted that's on some more state roads, but the traffic that gets there comes through our town. And so while we're talking specifically about Continental at this point, if we make it easier with thinking about Continental because they're good folks in our community, the point is if you make that process easier, people will come, right? If you build it, people will come. Let's keep what we have. They have access to it. They just have to ask questions, and they have to answer the questions that we pose them and the process that we put them through.
Excuse me. Next question, and I think this is primarily addressed to perhaps school board candidates and budget committee candidates. Can you speak in support of or opposition of the teacher contract issue on the school ballot? Why do you support it or not support it? And speak to that issue. Anybody want to step off on that one?
Sure, I'll take that. My wife was kind enough to inform me that when I was up here the first time, I didn't say my name. So for those few that may not know me, I'm Ray Peoples. On the budget committee, I was one of the folks that voted no on the contract. I voted no for a couple of reasons. First thing is I thought there was too much too quick. I thought there was a number of things that are very nebulous, and the biggest piece of that is the fact that the savings in healthcare haven't been proven. There's so many things that are happening in the healthcare area right now, and no one has come up with a plan that costs less today than it did yesterday. Industry is being hit with very high rates. Those rates are going to trickle down into the municipalities. So I personally thought it was too much too quick. I would have liked to have seen a contract that did something to address the health care, and when those savings were proven, more address the wages. I think our teachers do a wonderful job, and I think they certainly deserve to be paid. But those kind of raises and that structure isn't happening out there in the world today. Folks aren't getting those kind of raises. Many people have taken pay cuts. Not everybody, but some. My personal opinion with that was it was too much, too fast, and that Just throwing money at education doesn't mean better schools. We have a lot of things in play, Common Core, just a lot of things in the air. Cadillac healthcare tax, as I said at the deliberative session, that's going to hit us in 2 years. This is a Cadillac plan, so we're going to have to deal with all those costs here in the next little bit. Thank you.
A few weeks ago, I spoke as a budget committee member during deliberative as to why I voted to not recommend that, and I was limited, obviously, because as a budget committee member in that role, I had to give the reasons why I voted to not recommend, which were financial. Now, as a candidate speaking, I'll go a little further. That was a lot of money, which was the same reason why I spoke as a budget committee member. Preferably, I think what would have had a much better chance of passing, although this might pass also, and there's a good chance it will pass, but to get more people on board and to have more of a majority vote for it, a 1 year, 2% with the same changes in healthcare would have seemed a lot more palatable. There's a lot of uncertainty going on right now, and you can't plan 3 years in advance right now. There's a lot going on national, on the state level, even local. Cadillac health plan tax is coming. The health care plan might implode altogether, who knows. And plus I need to separate, because saying you don't support the proposal as presented this year, there's a lot of debate right now about, well, so you don't support the teachers, right? Or you don't support the kids. They're all separate issues, and it's just very disturbing to me to see them all tied into one. Supporting pay increases on a 3-year level for the teachers doesn't mean you don't or do support the children. Doesn't mean you do or don't support education. It's totally separate, totally separate. And I would hope that moving forward, those debates can happen separately and speak about financial, the benefits, where we are, what we could afford, what we're providing. A lot of debates there. So as a candidate, I would have preferred to see a shorter term with a raise, with a change in the health care plan, and then next year come back again and maybe go for another 1 or 2 year term. Thank you.
I did not have an opportunity to vote, but if I did, I would have also voted no, and for many of the same reasons that Mr. Pascucci and Mr. Peoples mentioned. 3 years is really dangerous to be locking the taxpayer in right now. We've seen healthcare costs escalate astronomically on the greater stage, and there's no way that that's not going to affect us now. I'm sure they say that this year's increase is limited to 4.whatever%, but what's to say that next year it's not going to be 12%, and then the following year even higher? We don't have a 3-year guarantee from the insurance company, and it's too much risk, too much exposure for the taxpayers, many of whom are, if they haven't taken a pay cut, they themselves have paid a lot higher in insurance, and people are hurting. So a 1-year deal to me would have been a lot more palatable, and then we could evaluate the impacts that we're going to be affected on the national level as they become more able to flesh it out. Thank you.
Jason?
When I look at the teacher's contract, the first thing I look at is not, Mr. Pascucci took a lot of the thunder, but first off, it isn't about kids. I have 2 kids in the system. Of course we support children. Who doesn't really, right? But reality is this. I personally have to look at it and say, what does the average person's compensation package look like? Does it at all look like what we're going to provide for the teachers? Because we have to pay for it. And so how is it equitable that those that may perhaps do get a meager raise this year have to then just pass it along? Because their costs are going up, their health insurance is going up. In my own case, I was dropped off, I was on my wife's plan, I was dropped off my wife's plan and forced onto my own plan, which was, so much greater. And so we all feel that too, as taxpayers. I know I've talked to Carolyn Light, and she understands that. But she's the president. She does what our membership wants her to do. They chose a 3-year deal because they didn't want to be on the same cycle as the police contract. So the police contract, this would be like, if they get a 3-year deal, the next time they come around, they won't be on the same cycle for fear of not passage. But they could have done one, and that would have, done the same thing. But again, none of us get the co-pays that are in this plan. None of us get the deductibles and everything else. We all have to go out and pay tremendously for our health care. And so, do I begrudge them for trying to do that? Absolutely not. But I think it makes it very difficult for passage. And I think it does a disservice to our town and the whole process when we can't get an agreement that a supermajority can pass. Because it creates divisiveness in our town. And people, again, it was a swing of like 45 votes last time. And so you've got half the population really, really upset that it didn't pass. And then the other half of the population, thank God we pushed that off again because I can't afford it right now. Last year's contract was much, much smaller than the one that they're proposing this year. So Mr. Pascucci is very optimistic that it could pass. I don't know, it's a 50-50 shot, right? We'll see how many people's independent lives have gotten better to where they believe that they can pass off more of their tax dollars. Just because we don't support the contract does not mean we do not support education. We have kids in these schools. We absolutely want the best for our kids. There are some great people here, but there are great people everywhere that are suffering. So we have to account for those people. We can't just say this group of people is more deserving than this group of people, right? So what do you do when there are competing interests that are just as deserving? Continue the status quo. Even though they don't have a contract, life continues here. And if they want a contract, if the point is a contract, then bring a zero-sum contract to the table and see if that passes. I guarantee that passes, right? If they want the stability of the contract, then bring one that people can afford. Thank you.
I'm going to offer you a slightly different perspective. It's my understanding that the teachers in this district have not had a contract for a number of years, and that the most experienced teachers have not had more than a 1% pay raise one time in the past 5 years. And I think it's important that we all think about what the teachers are doing. I think besides parents and family, grandparents, the people that are going to have the most influence over your children are the teachers in the classrooms. And I think all of us who've had children go through the school system, you remember that first day of school and how hard that was to bring your little 6-year-old to that first grade classroom and know that you were handing this child off to another adult for 6 hours during the day. And it doesn't change because even though your kids grow older, they're still your babies. So in 12th grade, they may be changing classrooms, but for 6 hours, the teachers that are standing at the head of those classrooms are the people who are teaching, inspiring, and encouraging your children and helping your children to form into who they're going to be. Now, given that responsibility, I would think we all want the most qualified, the best teachers we can possibly have to stand in the front of those classrooms. How do we get them? How do we keep them? We have to pay them at least a salary that's comparable with other towns around us. We have lost wonderful teachers because we just simply don't pay the same amount that Wyndham does or Londonderry. And that's a shame. Who's harmed by that? We are. Our kids are. So what I would like for you to consider is, if Article 2 doesn't pass, the winner there is the insurance company. And here's why I think that. We'll go back to the status quo. The teachers don't get their contract, they don't get their raises. And also, I'm not sure you all realize, but in the teacher contract, they're giving up a huge concession. They're giving up tenure, which means that We go by the quality of the teachers, not how long they've been teaching in the district, so we can retain the very best. So we still have the high insurance costs that are going to go up almost 10% a year, is the expected projection. The teachers don't get their contract, they don't get a raise. We don't get teachers who are going to stay in the system, and the insurance company wins. However, if Article 2 passes, the teachers get a salary that is more comparable, still not as much, but more comparable with the towns that are around us. Less incentive for them to go to another school district. They will take on more of their health insurance costs. They'll have a different health insurance plan that is 10% of what we're paying now, and is expected to rise only a little over 3% per year, not the over 8% or close to 10% that the current insurance plan has. And they will also, they've given up their tenure so that we will have the ability to take the very best teachers, the most qualified. And if we have to have a reduction in force, we can choose among the most talented, the most qualified, the most proved teachers, rather than just the teachers who've been here the longest. So who wins if Article 2 passes? The teachers definitely win. We definitely win. We get qualified, talented teachers who want to be here and who are paid a comparable salary. We don't have to worry about losing them and retraining new teachers. And the insurance companies don't win, or at least they don't win quite as much. So I see that as a win-win for us and for our children and for our town. Thank you.
Next question. You know, it's awfully difficult to stand up here and not get a chance to say your own opinions, but that's not my job today. This is addressed to the selectmen and the budget committee. Don't worry, school board members, we got more for you. If there is one thing that needs to change in town, what is it and why? It's for the selectmen and budget committee candidates. Who wants to kick it off? I'm not playing any favorites here, Al.
Very interesting question, Mr. Moderator. What is the one thing that should change in town? The current environment of the community that most stands out after seeing a number of local communities working throughout the state in various plants in town is the demeanor and perception of our community with regards to other professionals and other individuals that I come across. And while we all talk about growth and industry and tax burdens and why I'll pick on selectmen, former selectmen and current selectmen, why did they make those decisions and we didn't hear about it? One of the biggest challenges I believe that we need to address is fundamental communications, talking with individuals. When I was a selectman, there was a lot of face-to-face, person-to-person issues and things discussed at the personal level. As our community continues to grow, now we have a town administrator. We have a board of selectmen that are very diversified and occupied with running other communities and state representatives and a host of things. We have a more advanced web infrastructure where things are now no different than at the office. And the office is either at your computer, behind your truck, or shoveling at the incinerator, of which I've done all. We need to change our perception and we need to change our conduct and get back to looking at each and every individual and addressing them at a personal level. And not I'm a selectman or I'm a budget committee representative, or I'm a school board representative, I'm the moderator. It's all about us. And that's the one thing I continue to hear. Communications.
The one thing that needs to change, is there one or is there 20? Probably the biggest change that we need to do, we can look in this room and we can see is very evident. We don't have enough people involved. I would say the biggest change we could make that could benefit this whole town is if more people would get involved. Because if you're involved, you're well informed, and you're not just going to the polls to vote no because something's going to cost more money. And then we can have good elections, just like we should have this Tuesday with good people running and more informed voters.
You know, it's funny is we all have a very similar idea here, and it's what I see every day. We're very polarized, just like on the national level. You know, you got 50% that want this and 50% that want that, and we can't seem to find the middle ground, which is probably more than 80%. We probably, I guarantee, we agree upon more things than we all disagree on. But unfortunately, we all seem to focus on those small details that we can't agree on. And so, in my opinion, the one thing we need to change is it goes into both of what these gentlemen have said, right? How do we get people to participate? And that's by not disenfranchising them. And so whenever we do things that, even if it's a perception, right? So it may have been done correctly in every aspect, but if the perception we create when we do it is the wrong one, right? They become disenfranchised, and more people get marginalized and militant and become set in their ways rather than just take a minute and listen, right? And understand the other person's point of view. I've experienced this myself, right? I'm a very rigid person by nature, right? But I want to be convinced of it. I don't take things for granted. If you have an argument and you make a well-presented argument to me, I'll absolutely accept it. But we don't. We say, this is the way it is, like it or leave it. Well, people get turned off by that. We have to figure out a way to start making connections. Let's forget those things that we don't agree on, start working on things we agree on, and I think people then participate, because people generally aren't combative, right? They don't want to be involved in any of the negative stuff that goes on. We have to lead that way, right? And so we're not all perfect, and we continue to make mistakes, but we have to recognize it first, right? And then make it a point to agree.
I don't think that's a fair question, because I think there's probably a lot more wrong than we all know. Earlier today, when I was talking with Pam Bacelis on my way in here, kind of reflected back to when Linda and I first moved here about 24 years ago. And one of the coolest things, we were from Western New York originally. So in Western New York, you went to the ballot box and you didn't know half of what was going on. We went to our first town meeting down at GMS, and man, that place was full. And people were there, they were engaged, they were talking about the issues. People were getting up and they were speaking for and against, just like you've heard today, people are for and against things. But they were all there in the same room, and they were hearing the message. So they would hear a message that may be impassioned, let's give the teachers a raise. Or they would hear something unique, like the time we found out the town had a highway garage that no one knew about, and they wanted to put heat in it. But the meeting itself was more meaningful than what we do today. The Senate Bill 2 thing has destroyed Litchfield. It's destroyed the communications. It's destroyed the things that every one of these people have spoken. So my personal opinion, if you want to fix one thing and it may disenfranchise a voter somehow, and I don't understand that piece, is to get rid of it, get people back to town meeting. Now they come in, you have a chance, you have an opportunity to have the information and vote on it that day. And vote on it as a community, rather than getting the information disseminated through a cable channel, getting the information through a handout, getting information that is worked in some way or another, and then walking into a ballot box, not understanding what the hell it is that you're going in there for anyway, and just voting no. I went to several town meetings where I had in my mind that I was not going to vote yes for that particular thing, and by the time someone had got up and spoke on that particular topic and brought up something I hadn't thought about, my mind was changed and I voted yes. So, my personal opinion, that's the one thing that we could do to improve Litchfield. I don't see it happening, but that's at the top of my list.
I'm going to echo a lot of the same concern or sentiments as lack of involvement. I've spoken to a lot of young moms at the play group we attend in town, and they feel that there's difficult for their voices to be heard sometimes. There's a few well-known people who are well-educated about the issues who show up. I'm fascinated by this town meeting thing. It sounds very interesting. It would be a great way, apparently, if we went from hundreds of people to about 50 dedicated, hardcore people who are involved. The only request I would make if we do that, in order to limit the disenfranchising, because my husband or I would be disenfranchised, is one of us, something for childcare for those of us who have young kids who couldn't attend. But I do think that that would be a very interesting way of trying to rejuvenate the spirit of this town, get more people involved, to bring more points of view. The more points of view, the more ways you look at an issue, the more likely you are to have the best possible answer come out.
I think the question was what has to change?
Well, just what do you think is the most important thing?
Okay. Where I think a change would be very helpful, or I think should change, is less in the area of trust and more in the area of verification. And that's two-part. The voters, the people in this town, I would like to see less blind trust in their elected representatives and more verification. Realistically, I know that's not going to happen because we've all been there, raising kids, working 2 jobs, paying the bills, a lot to do. You can't get educated on every issue, so you look to 1 or 2 or 3 people and you say, I trust them. What I'm saying is, when anybody gets elected to any office in town, just go a little lighter on the trust of the person. Listen to them, take into consideration what he or she is saying, and then do your own research and come up with your own conclusion. We've heard it at the deliberative, at the town deliberative. We heard somebody stand up and say, I trust the Board of Selectmen more than I trust us. That almost killed me when I heard that. You shouldn't trust the Board of Selectmen. You shouldn't trust the school board. You shouldn't trust the budget committee. Or if you want to trust them, make sure you verify it to back it up. Everybody in this town, people that run for office, we're all fine people, but please verify what you hear. What we have more control over is those that are elected. I believe also the trust should go lighter and the verification should go a little heavier, meaning when things are presented, whether they're new programs, new pieces of equipment, the question should be why, how much, what can we do, what are the options, how can we change what we're doing, do we have to do it, do we have to implement this program, is there a way out of it? Sometimes it seems confrontational, but it isn't. But I think more questions should be asked, both in all Board of Selectmen, Budget Committee, and School Board. I think if that was done, and more challenges to everything were given, and more questions were asked, and everything was asked to be justified over and over again, I think we'd all be better off. It's not meant to be negative, it's not meant to say no, but it's just meant to make everything better. Because I think the results are better and greater when more questions are asked, things are challenged, and even second guessed.
This question is addressed to Ms. Lepore, I think only specifically to her, because Mr. Garrett has already made very public his feeling on the question as in the HLN. Question is, what is your position on Common Core? Do you support or oppose its implementation? And please explain. And Jason, I'll give you a chance to speak to it too.
Thank you for that question. I have not taken a position on the Common Core because I think I still have some questions myself as to whether or not it's going to be effective down the road for us. I do understand that it is not a federally mandated program, that this is a program that was adopted by the state of New Hampshire in 2010. I understand that it provides a structure, a roadmap, if you will, for the types of things that should be taught in the classroom, the skills to be mastered. And it's my understanding that many states, I think it's 43 or more, have adopted the Common Core standards. I think in itself it's a good idea to have standard concepts about what children should be learning in the schools. It prevents one state from having excellent schools and then another state from having terrible schools. But whether or not it is going to be too much of a tax on teachers, or whether or not teachers are going to be teaching to the test, is something that, frankly, I would like more information about myself. I'd like to talk to the superintendent about it. I'd like to talk to the education professionals, the administrators, to see what it is that they're seeing, what are they doing now, what kind of results they expect on the testing, and whether or not there's a concern on their part that this is going to be a problem more than a solution. Thank you.
If one were simply to Google Common Core, you'd find that many states that have chosen to adopt the standards are now reconsidering. Even Massachusetts, who is ranked internationally in the top 10, who adopted Common Core about a year and a half ago, has put a moratorium on it for 2 years to study it because it reduces their end result. We don't have to look very far to see any results. Nashua has been piloting this, and I'd like to share with you just a few of the comments from the educators and administration from Nashua regarding this. I know that Ms. Lepore in her letter to the editor this week made it appear anyway, and she can maybe answer it later, but made it appear that she was in support of the testing. Here's some comments from Nashua. I feel sad for the students that have to take this test. Not many will be successful. This was more of a test on computer skills than math concepts. If I was a student, I would have just picked out an answer and moved on. Too tedious. Kids will get sick of it and just guess to move on. Kids won't even get past the computer directions. The test is difficult to navigate. So many keystrokes to juggle. There wasn't a flow or cadence to the questions. The type and style of questions change from one to the next, and this test will be exhausting for the kids. I did 30 questions in an hour, then had to take a break. My eyes, these are adults taking this test, by the way. And my eyes hurt, my shoulders felt strained. When I returned 5 minutes later, all of my work was gone. Frustration level builds as you take the test, creating mental despair. Students will shut down. Many of the math questions seem to have no basis in the real world and skills that will never be used in real life. In my opinion, this test is a sad indictment of how disconnected the people who designed the test are from the typical students in the classroom. This test is designed for one type of student, the verbal learner with exceptional executive functioning skills. I took the grade 7 language arts test, and I believe it's developmentally designed for adults, not 7th graders. The questions are tedious and punitive. I'm not sure any 7th grader in the state would be able to score well on this test. Just 2 more. After observing middle school students take the test for over a decade, it is my firm belief that most kids will stop reading the directions because there are too many and they're far too complex. Students will fail this test, and the test will destroy their confidence, which is an important stage of their development. In addition, the results of the test will become public relations nightmare for the school and school districts as children will fail in large numbers. Why do we want to subject our kids to that? And I'll tell you why. It's what's called race to the top. It's about money. People and states who adopt this get money from the federal government that we obviously don't have. It's borrowed. Okay, so that they can do whatever they wish with the money, right? The state of New Hampshire did not adopt these. These are completely voluntary, which means each individual district can choose if they want to. The problem is they have to take the test. What's mandated is taking the test. So of course we're going to adopt the standards locally, because why? Our children will fail the test. Which means what? We're going to teach what's on the test. That's the point. The federal carrot, right? And we're going to adopt. The legislature has not voted this in. We've not had any public debate. There are no benchmark standards that these are written against. And the 2 people that were involved in developing the standards as content matter experts, Professors James Milgram and Susan and Ms. Stotsky, the one from she's from Massachusetts, who developed their great curriculum, have both refused to sign off on these standards. They were the 2 experts brought in to make sure they were correct. Refused to sign off on them because they damage a child's education. You can search them online. They're everywhere. They were here locally to speak to people and parents. We can do much better in our town. There are other standards that we can adopt simply, and it doesn't cost money. All you've got to do is adopt pre-existing standards. We can look right over the border to Massachusetts and pluck what they were doing. They exist for the world to take, and implement those. Those top 10 ranked internationally. That would be my preference.
Thank you. Let's wrap it up. You have a question, Bill? One from the floor?
Unionized employees, both in the school and the town, when their pay raises come up, they go on the ballot as a separate article to be voted on by the people. Same thing isn't necessarily true of our non-unionized employees in both the town and the school. So I'd like to know from each of the candidates what their position is regarding putting proposed pay raises for non-union employees on the ballot as separate warrant articles.
You pick this seat over here.
Mr. Spencer, that's an excellent question. When I was in the selectman's office, as you may recall, I actually put forward a number of challenges to that board, some of which revolved around restructuring the welfare distribution and ordinances. And one of my biggest and failed efforts was the restructuring of the non-unionized employees' pay scales, as well as the mechanisms to judge performance, or in some cases what's also referred to as merit. I believe that as a point, public record, all of the wages that we pay our employees are available to the citizens of Litchfield. But I do believe, like you, that they are not published, and they are set by a written set of guidelines that are used to be controlled by the Board of Selectmen, but now I believe some of that authority has been relegated down to our current administrator. And they should be closely examined when we look at pay rates for our call fire department, and we look at pay rates and pay structures for the landfill operators and things of that sort, these should be put forward because, once again, they involve each and every one of us, our wallets, our tax bases, and there is room for improvement. I engaged that several years ago. I would be more than interested in how that may or may not have progressed in closed minutes when we talk about individuals' wages and salaries in session. And from the surface looking in, there appears to be no significant change.
Just for clarification, so you would support putting those raises on a separate warrant article?
Yes, I would.
Mr. Raccio raises a very good point. A merit-based system is what most people have to live by. But when we come into town governments and municipal employees, things are a little different. I've found myself on both ends of this spectrum. I believe it was the first year that I was a selectman. Raises for the townspeople were not put as a separate warrant article and were not addressed in the budget. So therefore, one of the first things that we had actually moved on as a selectman is we actually gave the town employees, it was like a 2% raise. We did that within the existing budget that was already voted upon by the voters. I can see an advantage to doing it that way, because if you vote for a dollar amount in a budget and the selectmen can wiggle it to make it work, it's always good to recognize people by giving them a raise, okay? There's also the aspect of a time frame. If you go 3 years without a raise, it's kind of a slap in the face. But in the long and short, the society that we're in today, I do think it needs to be broken out of the budget because of the fact that, I mean, as you'll see on Tuesday, there's what, 20-something articles you're going to be voting on? And I know that the reason for that is solely so that the citizen has more rights to decide individually than as a whole in a budget. So I would support separating it, especially at this time and day.
Yeah, I'm not going to be so long. Absolutely goes on the warrant. It's folks that have to decide whether or not they can afford to actually provide an increase. And so if there's wiggle room in the budget, that just means it was overfunded to begin with. People haven't, when a voter is presented something at the budget hearing, this is what we plan on, right? The state Supreme Court, in a case out of Hampton, said that it's bottom line. The Board of Selectmen, once it's voted on bottom line, Board of Selectmen do whatever they want with that money. But you know, just because something is legal, it doesn't mean it's right. In my opinion, when you stand up here and tell me what it is that I'm going to fund, and then after the fact, spend it on something totally different that's non-emergency, to me is dishonest. Okay, things come up during the year, but unless it's an emergency, stick to what you told the people you need the money for. Because to me, that's just a shell game. Whether it's overt or covert, it doesn't matter. So if something, you know, a fire happens and it's, you know, it's not covered, that's not a good example, but if something happens that's an emergency and you have to, a police car fails, dies, was in an accident, and you have to get another one, so be it. Find it in the budget. Because people understand that. It's one of the, and that's a very important feature in what I was discussing earlier about what we could change. Because people don't have all those details. What they see is, wait a minute, you asked me for the following, now you're spending it on something else. And so people get become distrustful of what's going on a daily basis. It just sits in the back of their head, and it's easier to vote no for an increased proposed budget. There may be very valuable reasons why a proposed budget has an increase in it, but that's because you've explained it. People go, okay, but then all of a sudden you're buying other things. So it creates distrust, maybe not, you know, on the top level of their head, but in the back of their head. And that's how we move along with that. So yes, Bill, on the budget.
It's an interesting question, Bill. It actually goes back to something that I don't understand in the United States, and certainly don't understand with our employees that work for the town and the schools. We had given up discrimination and segregation and serfdom, you know, things way back in the old days, but we create artificially two classes of people in both the school district and the town. We have the union employees and we have the non-union employees. Well, I fundamentally think that's wrong. I think everybody should be on the same scale. They all work in the same building, as a matter of fact. They may have different skill sets, but that's what they get paid for. The other side of that is, if we're going to force the union employees out to a warrant article for their pay raises, I feel that equally so we should do that with the non-bargaining employees. But fundamentally, I think the fact that we have different classes of people in the same organizations doing the work, I think that's fundamentally wrong.
Ray stole my answer. I agree that, yes, they should be on the ballot. And the main reason is basic fairness. If one group is subjected to a vote, the other group should be as well. So yes, I do agree with that.
I think it should be on the ballot. It comes down to who's the boss. It's this town is owned by everybody that pays taxes. Of course, we elect a representative government, in this case, the Board of Selectmen. This might have something to do with the issue that the Board of Selectmen this past year voted to give raises to the non-union town employees. The money for it was not in the budget, but they approved the plan, so now after Election Day, they're going to have to decide, are they going to find the money somewhere else to honor what the 5 of them voted in or not, because the voters of this town are not going to have a choice, or did not have a choice on that. I believe they should. Many times we hear, well, the town's, you know, it's like a business. Unfortunately, we use that analogy for certain issues, but then, well, it's not really like a business because it's a town, it's different, and we use that for other reasons. We compare to the private sector when it benefits us, but then we say, but compared to other towns, in government towns, and the way the government is run, we have to keep up with them for that reason. So we need to pick a standard and stick with it. I believe it should be on the ballot. We own the town. The more we delegate or more control power we give away to, in this case, let's say the Board of Selectmen or the school board for that matter, we'll never get that back. Then a group of 3 or 5 is making the decision, and then some of that from the Board of Selectmen might get delegated down to, like it was brought up, to the town administrator, which is an unelected position. So keep control, get educated, do your due diligence, ask the questions, align it with something, whether it be a business, like we many times hear, or we're just going to stick with comparing it to other towns. Bring it to the voter, make a valid case, and listen to the will of the voter, is the way I would have it.
I also agree that it should be a separate warrant article. I think raises for non-union employees are certainly a cost that can be anticipated. It's not something that's a surprise. It should be considered carefully. I think it should be presented to the voters, and they should be allowed to make that decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. By the way, in case anybody's wondering why I'm all green today, 59 years ago, March 17th, 1955, St. Patrick's Day became a very important day in my life. It's the day I said I will to the United States Air Force and left Providence, Rhode Island on a gorgeous spring day, going to Geneva, New York for 9 weeks, thinking the winter was over. Boy, was I wrong. So I'm not Irish. St. Patrick's Day has a significant meaning in my life. Also, I'd like to comment that, going back, take a little liberty here, my experience in the town government, like the school board and several years, back when Griffin Memorial was our only school. Back to being moderator for over 21 years. Nothing's new under the sun. This issue of communication was there, alive and kicking. It is still alive and kicking today. Today, communication is theoretically easier for the elected officials, what with the internet, with the Hudson Litchfield News, which does a pretty good job of giving us information of what's going on. But then again, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So all this information can be out there, but if people don't access them, what good does it do? And that's why I liked the old town meeting. Because under the old system, whether I agreed with how a person voted or not on an issue was unimportant. What I respected was they had made their decision based on having heard all sides of the argument before they voted. We are not assured of that under our current situation. With that, I'll stop preaching. And thank you all for coming. I hope will be a significant home audience on our TV. And again, I want to thank all the candidates for having the courage to step forward and put your names on the line to do the jobs that need to be done in our community. Thank you very much. And enjoy the rest of your weekend.